everybody. Thanks for watching and listening. My name is Sarah Bock, and this is my senior capstone. I decided to do it on the novel coronavirus. Of course, here it is, stealing the spotlight again. I figured this would be something interesting to learn about since, of course, we are doing all this remote learning right now and just seeing what we could do to better be prepared for it and help stop the spread. Okay, so as an introduction, what we know is that in January of 2020, the novel coronavirus had came to the Americas from China. This resulted in a worldwide pandemic and a complete shutdown of the country in March. It is suspected, and it has been found out, that the virus had come from a bat soup in China. What this happened was, it was an ingredient that was brought in from an open meat market and from unsanitary conditions. The virus spread through air travel to places like Italy that we know of, and Europe. Okay, so as we know, that in January of 2020, the novel coronavirus had come to America from China. This resulted in a worldwide pandemic and a complete shutdown of the country in March. It has been suspected and found out that the virus had came from a bat soup in China. Its ingredients were bought in an open meat market. So what happened was, these were very unsanitary conditions and it wasn't cooked properly. Therefore, we have a animal to human crossover with the virus. And then, as we know, it spread through air travel to places like Italy and Europe, and then eventually the Americas. So the problem here is that due to the growing influx of the patients in the hospital systems, and there's a growing need for masks for healthcare workers, but in an effort to conserve mask usage, cloth masks have been made for people to wear and reuse instead of the paper surgical masks. So it's been a really controversial topic, just as how effective these masks are. The cloth mask is washable and reusable, but the surgical mask is only for one single use and can be pretty costly. So what we're seeing is a lot of lay people, just pretty much everybody around, walking around using these. Things like grocery stores, banks, all the essential workers that are still allowed out are using the cloth masks. And even in the healthcare field, they're giving out cloth masks that were made by local churches and such to help support the cause. And so that's what our problem is right now, is due to the growing influx of patients in the hospital systems, there's a growing need for masks among healthcare workers. In an effort to conserve mask usage, cloth masks have been made for people to wear and reuse instead of the paper surgical masks. It's been a controversial topic just as to how effective these masks really are. The cloth mask is washable and reusable, but the surgical mask is only for one single use and can be costly. Now, we do know that the surgical mask can be put on and used whenever, wherever, but the cloth mask, on the other hand, can be reused multiple times, and it's cheaper to produce. So the question is the homemade ones, are they just as effective as the surgical masks? And so this brings us to the PICO statement, which is, does wearing a cloth mask among healthcare workers reduce the amount of respiratory infections in comparison to surgical masks in the ICU? So this is the real question of how well are we protecting our nurses? So let's look at the literature. So I have about 3 different articles to show you guys. And so the first one is the optical microscopic study of surface morphology and filtering efficiency of face masks by the scientists at the Center for Analytical Sciences. Whew, that's a lot. So what this does is, this really isn't studying the cloth mask to surgical mask in an ICU setting. This is just understanding and studying the effectiveness of just both these masks. So what they did is they sprayed an aerosol spray into the air that consisted of many different particle sizes and shapes that could be, what these would resemble like bacteria and other viruses that are in the air. And so then the masks used were a cloth mask, and then a cloth mask has been one that's been pre-worn and washed, and a surgical mask. So what they're really doing is they're only testing the 2 masks, but they're testing how effective these cloth masks are after they've been washed and reused and stretched a few times. And as a result, the surgical mask showed to have a 94% better filtering system than the cloth mask. And so what does this do? This is due to the smaller layer in the surgical mask that is less porous than the cloth. And then due to the washing and stretching of the cloth mask, it showed to have an even bigger decrease in filtering efficiency than the regular cloth mask. So this is showing after it's been used a couple times, washed, and then hung out, it's definitely not as effective anymore. So the next article we have is the effectiveness of masks and respirators against respiratory infections in healthcare workers. So this is a systematic review and a meta-analysis by the researchers at the Infectious Diseases Society of America. And this one is exactly what we need. It directly compares face masks to respiratory infections among healthcare workers. And so these meta-analysis of randomized control trials. So they're doing a systematic review of over 2,000 articles found throughout the world that the surgical masks were more effective than the cloth masks. And so what I thought would be an extra added little tidbit for this is this quote that I have here at the bottom that says, "In such cases, single-use medical masks are preferable to cloth masks for which there is no evidence of protection and which might facilitate transmission of pathogens when used repeatedly without adequate sterilization." So that's a lot to really take in. So what we're really learning here is that we know that surgical masks came up to be better in filtering particulate matter here, but that the cloth mask might even help you get sick or collect more of these particles. And so that's something that would be really interesting to do some more research about, is just how to take care of these masks. And then the third article we have here is a cluster randomized trial of cloth masks compared with medical masks in healthcare workers. This is exactly what we're looking for again. This study is by the BMG Open, and it directly compares the cloth mask to surgical masks once again. So this study is a randomized controlled trial aimed at directly comparing the cloth masks to surgical masks, which they also call medical in this case, in healthcare workers in the intensive care. So what they did is they did their own study of 15 different hospitals. They had nurses wear the mask for their entire shift, which is 8 hours, for 4 consecutive weeks. At the end of the study, the research used filtration testing to find out that the cloth masks had significantly higher particulate matter on them. And so in conclusion for this article, publishers make an effort for the statement of exercising caution when using a cloth mask. Moisture, and so that brings us to our next extra little tidbit here at the end that I put into, is just moisture retention. The reuse of cloth masks and poor filtration may result in an increased risk of infection. Then the article states that cloth masks should not be used by healthcare workers in high-risk situations. It's just a lot of times when we make the cloth mask, people make it with only one layer, which can be actually detrimental to these kinds of things. So it really matters about how this mask is created and how it's worn, because the moisture from our breath is what's making these more harmful. Okay, so from an ethical standpoint is that it's not ethical to ask nurses on the front lines who are helping detect and treat the coronavirus patients and to not protect them. So we have to do something for them. But although the cloth masks do not do nearly as good of a job as surgical masks, the CDC still recommends that they are worn to help blunt the travel of the virus. So what they're saying is that here is just something's better than nothing. So we need some form of protection that's necessary for nurses and other healthcare workers. And also what the CDC is saying, that it's about how you make this mask instead of just the one layer. It's really important just to put 2 in there, and then maybe you could put a coffee filter in between those, and that will really help catch some matter. So for my recommendations after doing this research, about the different types of masks available, the surgical masks are more effective in reducing the amount of respiratory infections among healthcare workers. The use of cloth masks have been around for years, but use and research of the mask efficiency in the Western world is still in its infancy. In a perfect world, everyone would get a surgical mask, but due to the shortage, cloth masks can still be used. So what we're saying here is that a lot of these research articles that we see online and things like that, a lot of them are from and based in Asia because of all the pollution. So what we're trying to do is they're trying to do more research about the cloth masks in the United States. So we just have to wait for more information about that. But cloth masks can still be used if they're made correctly. And then some more recommendations that I got specifically for COVID by an ICU doctor named Robert Rashik. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. But he's from the Honor Health Osborne Medical Center in Arizona. So yes, this is from our Western world, but in his work that he states that all healthcare workers should practice droplet precautions at all times. So that means wearing the mask constantly, anything they can to help stop this spread. So wear a surgical mask if available, but if they don't have it, then you can wear cloth. That's okay because it still helps something. Then what we want to do is we want to treat all COVID patients with airborne precautions. So wear an N95, you want to put a light, you want to use special respirators for the patient when you're intubating them. And then you also want to reduce unnecessary staff and visitors. So I think we all see this in the hospitals that we work at, is that we don't have any more visiting hours. We take temperatures on the on our staff that comes in. And then we also want to consolidate computer usage. This is just, everyone touches them, there's just a lot of germs on them, so we really just got to be watching out for that. And then so for my reflection, I decided to choose this topic because of how relevant it is to me. The coronavirus is a pandemic and should be at the top of our list of concerns. So I'll also be starting out in the intensive care unit as a new grad. In the hospital that I work at, there are many COVID patients on their ICU floor as well. And then since I'm younger with no underlying conditions, if and when I get this coronavirus, I'm most likely to be asymptomatic, and then I might not know if I've had it either, but I still want to be able to help stop the spread. I always thought that the cloth masks were better because I work at the Cleveland Clinic and they had given it out to everybody, and then you take them home, reuse and wash them, bring it right on back, but it turns out that's not the case. And then now that I know that the surgical masks are more effective to help stop the spread, so it's really important that everybody does their part to help make this coronavirus go away or be smaller. And then here are my references. Thanks everybody for listening. Have a good day. Bye.